What is peace? What is peace? I'm going to go into a stream of consciousness before I really just directly define this word, peace. This idea of peace. Before I came to a lot of the deep realizations that I came to, when I first started to discover this idea of spiritual awakening, I could not fathom what peace could really be. And it really dawned on me once I had some of my early awakenings that I never truly knew what peace was. And it actually turned out I realized that until I awakened, it was impossible for me to know peace. It was impossible to know peace because I have developed an inherent avoidance of the present moment. I wanted to experience everything except the present moment. Because in the present moment is where the real me exists. And the real me is broken. The real me is hurt. The real me does not like a lot of things about this world. So sitting alone in the presence of truth, this present moment, it's torture for someone who cannot look in the mirror and look at themselves. So I had an inherent urge, an inherent need to manipulate my reality, my physical reality. And because this need was so strong, I ignored the non-physical side of reality. I didn't even realize that there are non-physical things in reality. It seems so logical to assume that all there is that could exist is what we see in the physical realm. It took me a while to realize that there's actually an unseen side of this reality, and it's actually more real than what we see. It's actually more real than the physical objects that we can touch. The more I started to awaken to this unseen nature of myself, the more I started to understand everything which is unseen. The more I started to uncover secrets about this universe. Because I started to realize that a lot of what's really here to observe and know cannot be physically seen by our physical eyes. And in fact, the truth of this reality, the nature of this reality, is unseen. It's formless. Form gets created out of this formlessness. Something gets created out of this nothingness. That is how nothing becomes something, because nothing is the origin of all something. Just like silence is the origin of all noise. Zero is the origin of all numbers which come after zero. So I had this realization that everything comes from nothing, because nothing is the only thing that could exist before something exists. And this nothing is what I realize is God, which is why God is formless, because God is form before it becomes form. God is that which exists before existence itself. So at a certain point, I started to realize that who I think I am and what I think I'm doing here and the reality that I'm assuming is going on is actually not what I think it is. So I started to see beyond the physical. I started to see through it. There's certain lines that I started to be able to see through. I started to connect certain dots. And what I started to realize is that this reality we live in is actually very intelligent, and it's actually watching us. And the more aware of it we become, the more aware of us it becomes. This is a mirror-like occurrence. This life that we exist in, it just happens to be a mirror of our own consciousness. And what we see physically happens to be a mirror of what we don't see physically. Whatever we see physically has an unseen origin. Ultimately, that is what the word manifestation means. It is the process of something unseen becoming seen, something unrealized becoming realized, something unknown becoming known. It's the process of nothing becoming something. And this is the process that every physical object goes through in order to become a physical object. Because before it becomes the object, it must be a concept, an unseen idea that becomes a physical idea, which is now seen. So these are the types of realizations I had to have in order for me to really wrap my mind around manifestation. Manifestation could never make sense for me unless I understood the nature of my reality and who I am. And that's the issue that a lot of people have with manifestation, is that they're not able to really lay a foundation of knowledge and wisdom for how this stuff really works. What people have to understand is that even though this is not a religion, it wouldn't be possible unless the universe we live in was not, unless the universe we live in is intelligent and alive. That's where God comes from. It comes from the knowing that we exist within a divine, intelligent existence that consciously creates things out of nothing. No beginning, no end. Infinity. Meaning existing forever without a beginning or an end. Let that sink in. I'm going to let that breathe for a couple seconds. No beginning, no end. Infinity. Another word would be eternity.